The first time I saw my sister after 5 years, she was unconscious. And the second time, she was dying. Massive internal bleeding, the resident said, breathless. Blood pressure crashing. We need trauma-led. I was already walking. I didn't know it was her yet. Not when I scrubbed in. Not when I snapped on gloves. Not when I stepped under the harsh white lights of Trauma Room 3. All I saw at first was blood. Then I saw her face. Monica. My sister. The woman whose lie cost me everything. For a moment, the room went silent. Not actually silent. Machines were still beeping, nurses were moving, someone was calling out vitals, but inside me, everything stopped. 5 years. 5 years since my parents told me not to come home. 5 years since my mother said, "We know what you did." 5 years since my father wouldn't even look at me. And now Monica was on my table. "Dr. Aurora," the resident asked. "Orders." I blinked. I was no longer the girl standing outside my childhood home with a suitcase and swollen eyes. I was Dr. Aisha Aurora, head of trauma, and her life was in my hands. "Prep for emergency surgery," I said, steady. "Cross-match 6 units. Call vascular." My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. But something deep in my chest cracked open. Because this wasn't fate. This was irony so sharp it felt intentional. They believed her. They chose her. They cut me off over her lie. And now I was the only one who could save her. I didn't go to the waiting room before surgery. I didn't want to see my parents' faces yet. Not like this. Not when the last time I saw them, my mother had slapped me. Not when my father said, "If you walk out that door, don't come back." I walked out. And I didn't come back. 5 years ago. Started with a missing envelope. That's the stupid part. An envelope full of cash from my father's business, meant for a vendor payment. Disappeared from his office desk. And Monica said she saw me near it. That was all it took. She didn't accuse me directly at first. She cried. She trembled. She said, "I didn't want to say anything, but I saw Aisha in Dad's office that afternoon. I was in his office. I was borrowing a pen. But the money was already gone. When my father asked me, I laughed at first. I thought it was ridiculous. 'Why would I steal from you?' I asked. Monica's eyes filled with tears. 'I didn't say you stole it,' she whispered. 'I just said you were there.' It was genius, really. She never directly called me a thief. She just planted doubt. And doubt spreads faster than truth. The money was never found. The vendor threatened legal action. Stress exploded in our house. And slowly, quietly, the air shifted. My father started locking his office. My mother stopped leaving her purse unattended around me. Monica stopped meeting my eyes. Then came the final blow. A week later, my father found cash in my backpack. The exact amount that was missing. I didn't put it there. I swear on everything I love, I didn't. But I was the only one who used that bag. Except I wasn't. Monica had borrowed it 2 days earlier for a quick errand. I told them that. I begged them to check cameras. I pleaded. My mother looked at me like I was a stranger. "Stop lying," she said quietly. And that hurt more than the accusation. 'Cause lies I could fight. But disappointment? That buried me alive. Back in the present, Monica's blood pressure dropped again. "Clamp," I ordered. I moved like muscle memory. Precise. Detached. Professional. I didn't see my sister on that table. I saw a patient. That's what I told myself. But when I opened her abdomen and saw the damage, the ruptured spleen, the torn vessels, something inside me whispered, "You could walk away. You could let someone else take over. You could step out and say it's a conflict of interest. No one would question it." But I didn't step back. I leaned in. "Let's save her," I said. "'Cause 5 years ago I lost my family over a lie. Tonight I would not lose myself over the truth." Outside those operating room doors, I knew my parents were sitting in plastic chairs, praying, terrified, probably not even knowing that the daughter they erased was the one fighting for Monica's life. They thought I was a thief. They thought I betrayed them. They chose her version of the story. And now her life was in my hands. And this time, I would decide who I was, not them. 5 years ago, the house felt smaller. Not physically smaller, but every corner whispered that I didn't belong. It started with Monica's wedding announcement. I remember seeing the invitation lying casually on the kitchen counter. My mother handed it to me with a tight smile. "You're invited," she said. The words felt hollow, like they were cutting air, not forming a sentence. But when I read it, I realized it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Aisha Aurora, former family member. I blinked. Former family member? First I laughed, bitter, sarcastic, hollow. Maybe it was a joke. A cruel one. But the truth hit when my father spoke. "Stay home, Aisha. Don't ruin her day." I froze. Don't ruin her day. The sentence echoed in my head like a verdict. My own parents had judged me guilty. Guilty of a crime I never committed. Guilty of being a daughter who asked for fairness. Guilty of telling the truth. Monica's lie had worked. Brilliantly, terrifyingly. It was subtle. She never said I stole money. She just made sure every word, every hesitation, every glance added a layer of doubt. And my parents, blinded by it, chose her story over mine. The wedding itself was worse. I remember watching from the street. From the corner where I could see the lights, hear the music, but not touch any of it. My parents were there, smiling. Smiling at her. Not a glance my way. And Monica, she looked radiant. Happy. Untouchable. And me? I was invisible. A ghost haunting the streets where my childhood memories lived. That day, I realized that family isn't always love. Sometimes it's a transaction. A gamble. And the wrong bet can leave you on the outside forever. The next few months were a blur of isolation. Birthday parties I wasn't invited to. Holidays I wasn't expected to attend. Every phone call, every casual remark from relatives, every tiny interaction carried the silent message, "You don't belong here." I tried reasoning. I tried writing letters. I tried begging for the truth to matter. Nothing. Monica's story had cemented itself as reality. And my parents, they were too proud, too stubborn, or maybe too scared to admit they were wrong. And the cruelest part? My sister never apologized. Not once. She reveled in it, subtle as it was. A whispered joke here, a sneer there. A casual mention of how Aisha always gets things wrong, as if every achievement I had, every milestone I reached, was a reminder of my supposed failure. It was my father who delivered the final blow. One evening, I returned from university to find the house locked. Not just the doors. The windows. The air itself seemed barricaded. My father met me at the gate. His face was stone. "Aisha," he said. His voice was calm, deadly in its quiet. I braced myself. "You're done here," he said. No argument. No explanation. Just done. That was the moment I truly became alone. Everything I had known as family, as home, as belonging gone. I packed my bag that night, took what little I could carry, and walked away. Tears I cried then were the last ones I allowed anyone to see. 'Cause I swore in that instant I would never let anyone else see me broken. And so began my real life. I left behind the house that smelled of jasmine and betrayal. I left behind the parents who chose a lie over their daughter. I left behind Monica, the sister who became untouchable in their eyes. I moved to the city. Small apartment, small dreams. But slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt myself. Medical school, late nights, endless shifts. Residencies where I scrubbed in until my hands cracked. Hospitals that didn't care about my past. Hospitals that only cared about skill, precision, and results. I learned something vital during those years. Respect isn't given. Family isn't guaranteed. Validation doesn't come from who's supposed to love you. Comes from yourself. And yet, seeing her on that table tonight, my sister, the woman who had destroyed everything, it wasn't easy. Part of me screamed to step back, to leave her to fate. But another part, stronger, whispered, "This is your moment. You've become more than their opinion. You've become your own truth." So I leaned in, and I worked, because the only person whose judgment mattered now was mine. The city never sleeps. And for me, neither did my determination. The apartment I rented was small, the walls thin, and the nights long. But each morning, as the sunlight filtered through the cracked blinds, I felt a small spark of freedom. A life untouched by the poison of my past. Medical school was brutal. I didn't have anyone to call for help. No one to bring me meals during late-night study sessions, no one to reassure me when my hands trembled before my first surgery. But I had something stronger than family, resolve. I worked harder than anyone I knew. And slowly, people began to notice. My professors, my colleagues, even patients. I became known as precise, calm under pressure, someone who could be trusted in the worst moments of life and death. Success, I realized, wasn't about being loved. It was about showing up, even when no one else believed in you. It wasn't long before the hospital noticed. "Dr. Aisha Aurora, please report to the surgical wing," said the nurse one morning, handing me a schedule I had been waiting for. I glanced down at the papers. My hand shook slightly. This was the rotation that would decide whether I got my residency, the one step closer to becoming the surgeon I had dreamed of. I reminded myself, they don't know my past. They don't know my battles. All they will see is my skill. And that night, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the OR, I proved it. A complex appendectomy, a patient in critical condition, everything depended on precision. When it was over and the patient was stable, my attending surgeon gave me a look, one of respect. "You've got the hands for this," he said. "And the mind. Keep going." I smiled. No one had to know what those words meant to me. That I had walked out of a house of betrayal and built myself from scratch, that I had fought for every inch of dignity I now held. Then came the day I saw her. Monica. She wasn't in a wedding gown this time. She was in a patient gown. And the irony wasn't lost on me. She had been rushed into the ER with an accident that left her unconscious. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave her to fate. After all, she had taken everything from me. But I was a doctor now. My oath didn't care about revenge, cared about saving lives. I scrubbed in, gloves on, heart steady though my mind churned. The surgery was complicated, more than I had expected. But as I navigated the challenges, I realized something. The fear, the anger, the betrayal, it no longer controlled me. I worked with skill, precision, and calm. And when it was over, I stepped back, exhausted but victorious. The attending surgeon nodded. "Excellent work, Dr. Aurora." "Exceptional." I looked down at Monica, still unconscious, and felt nothing. Not hatred, not satisfaction. Only clarity. I had won, but not in the way anyone expected. I had won by being myself, stronger, better, unbroken. When she woke, her first words weren't apologies. They never are. Why didn't you let me die?" she whispered. I leaned in, calm, professional, but my eyes held the weight of everything she had done. "Because that's not who I am," I said. Her face paled. The woman who had thrived on manipulation, who had lived in the shadow of lies, now faced a reality she couldn't control. "You've changed," she muttered. I nodded. "I had to." "You made sure of that." It was a strange victory. One that didn't involve celebrations or accolades. It was quiet, internal. But it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Words spread quickly. People who had doubted me, colleagues who had whispered about my past, patients who had once ignored my recommendations, they now looked at me differently. I was no longer Aisha, the girl my sister ruined. I was Dr. Aisha Aurora. Surgeon. Respected. Unstoppable. And yet, somewhere deep inside, I knew the battle wasn't over. My parents had chosen Monica. My sister had humiliated me. The world had turned against me. But now I had a choice: let the past dictate me or let the past fuel me. I chose fuel. That evening, I sat alone in my small apartment, thinking about the woman who had tried to erase me. I realized something important. The power she held over me was gone. She could no longer define my self-worth. She could no longer control my life. And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to survive anymore. I was going to thrive. I was going to show my family, my sister, and the world what it meant to betray me, and pay for it in the quietest, most powerful way possible, by living better, stronger, and without regret. I never thought I'd see my family again. Through everything, after the humiliation, after the betrayal, I had built walls around my heart. But life has a way of forcing us to face the past, whether we want to or not. Started with a call from my mother. Her voice was tentative, almost fragile. "Aisha, your father wants to see you." I froze. My fingers tightened around the phone. The very people who had abandoned me, who had chosen Monica over me, wanted to see me now. I didn't answer immediately. I walked around my apartment thinking, weighing. And then I realized this wasn't about forgiveness. Not yet. This was about showing them what they had lost. The meeting was set at a quiet cafe near the city center. I arrived first, dressed professionally, calm, composed. The moment I walked in, I felt the weight of old memories, the laughter, the arguments, the constant comparisons to my sister. But I didn't let it shake me. When they arrived, their faces were a mixture of guilt, surprise, and something else, curiosity. They barely recognized the woman before them. I smiled politely. "Hello, Mom." "Dad." My mother's eyes welled up. "Aisha, you look different." "I've grown," I said simply. My father shifted uncomfortably. We wanted to apologize." I held their gaze steady. "Apologies are words. I measure people by actions." And then, just like that, I laid it all out. Every humiliation, every betrayal, every time I had been pushed aside in favor of my sister or Monica. I spoke not with anger, but with a clarity that left them speechless. I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't the weak girl they could dismiss. Weeks passed, and the family began to adjust, awkwardly, cautiously, to my new presence. I could see the tension every time my sister, Mira, tried to assert dominance. She came to my apartment one evening, feigning concern. "Aisha, I heard about your surgery success." "That's impressive," she said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. I nodded, offering a small smile. "Thank you, Mira. I've worked hard." Her eyes flickered with something I recognized immediately: envy. I just hope you're not holding grudges," she added. I leaned back in my chair, calm. Grudges are heavy. I prefer to move forward. Her expression faltered. She wasn't used to being met with dignity instead of tears or anger. Meanwhile, news of my success reached Monica. She had been arrogant, thinking she could always manipulate her way through life. But now the tables had turned. One evening I received a text. "Can we meet? I want talk." I considered ignoring it, but something in me wanted closure, not revenge. We met at a park, away from the city chaos. She sat there, visibly nervous. You saved me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied, steady. "Because I am a doctor. Not because of anything else." She looked down, shame finally breaking through her usual arrogance. "You've changed. I didn't expect this." I let a small smile touch my lips. I changed because I had no choice. But the choice to thrive, that was mine. Her eyes filled with tears. I felt no pity, only clarity. I was free of the weight she carried. And I realized something crucial. My life no longer revolved around her, my sister, or even my parents. I was my own person. Back home, I found myself sitting at my desk, reflecting. I had faced Monica. I had faced my family. And yet, the strongest battle wasn't external. It was internal. Could I truly forgive? Could I truly let go of all the years of betrayal? The answer came slowly, like a soft dawn breaking over a dark sky. I didn't need to forgive to thrive. I didn't need their acceptance to validate my worth. I only needed myself. By now, my reputation as a skilled doctor had spread further. Patients trusted me. Colleagues respected me. And somewhere in the quiet corners of my mind, I felt a sense of triumph that was deeper than any victory over Monica or my family. I had reclaimed my life. I had reclaimed my dignity. And as I looked at my reflection in the mirror that night, I finally saw her, the real Aisha Aurora. Strong, independent, unstoppable. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the girl who had been discarded, overlooked, and humiliated. I felt like a woman who had taken everything the world had thrown at her and turned it into strength. And with that realization, I smiled. Past could try to haunt me, but it no longer had the power to define me. The morning sun poured through the large windows of my clinic, illuminating every corner of the space I had built with my own hands. Each patient I greeted, each life I touched, reminded me of how far I had come. The girl who once felt invisible now commanded respect, not through force, but through competence and calm confidence. I loved this life I was creating. Every challenge, every sleepless night had been worth it. And yet, I knew some battles weren't over, not the ones that involved my family or my sister. One afternoon, I received a call from Mira. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying nerves she usually hid under arrogance. "Aisha, I need your advice," she said. I paused. This wasn't her usual attempt to belittle me. There was sincerity behind her words. "Go ahead," I said, keeping my tone neutral. She explained a situation at work, one that required a delicate touch, a situation she clearly couldn't handle alone. As I listened, I realized this was her way of reaching out, of acknowledging that perhaps she had underestimated me all these years. I gave her guidance calmly, professionally, without a trace of bitterness. She thanked me repeatedly, and for the first time I saw vulnerability in her eyes. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Dinner at home tonight. We want to celebrate your achievements." I stared at the text. My first instinct was to refuse. Old wounds don't heal overnight. But then I thought of the woman I had become, composed, confident, and independent. I wanted to see them face the reality of my growth. I agreed. Dinner was tense at first. My parents tried to balance pride with guilt, their eyes darting between me and Mira, who seemed visibly uncomfortable. "You've done so well, Aisha," my father said, attempting a smile. I nodded politely. "Thank you, Dad. I've worked hard just like I always should have." My mother reached out, touching my hand softly. We're sorry for everything." I looked at her, the woman who had often sided with my sister, who had allowed Monica to hurt me, and I realized I didn't need to respond with anger. I only needed to assert myself. "Apologies are words," I said evenly. "Actions matter more. And my actions from now on will speak louder than any words." The room went silent. My parents were stunned by my composure, by my refusal to be swayed by emotion alone. Later that night, Mira pulled me aside. I've been unfair to you all these years, she admitted, her voice breaking. I looked at her, seeing the sister I once loved, the one I had felt replaced by, and the one who was now finally acknowledging the truth. We all make mistakes, I said softly. What matters is that we learn from them. That's how we grow. Her eyes filled with tears. Can we start over? I nodded. Yes. But understand this, I am not the same girl you once dismissed. Respect me or stay in your lane. Your choice. In the weeks that followed, my life continued to flourish. My clinic expanded, colleagues sought my mentorship, and patients came to me not just for medical advice but for reassurance, compassion, and guidance. And as I walked through the bustling corridors one evening, I felt a deep sense of pride. Every step I had taken, the struggles, the betrayals, the late nights, the tears, had brought me here. I had turned pain into purpose. Then came an unexpected call from Monica. I wanted to apologize again, she said, her voice trembling. I paused. There was no anger in me anymore, only clarity. Apology accepted, I replied simply. But understand this, my life is not about what you think or feel. It's about the choices I make, the people I value, and the goals I pursue. She fell silent, and I hung up. The finality was liberating. I had faced every obstacle, every person who tried to define my worth, and I had emerged stronger. That night, I sat by my window, looking at the city lights. The world outside was alive, full of opportunities, challenges, and endless possibilities. And for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. I thought about my journey, the betrayals, the humiliations, the doubts I had once carried like heavy chains. Now they were gone, replaced with strength, purpose, and the unwavering belief in myself. I smiled softly. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. I was the author of my destiny. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever challenges came next, I would face them as Aisha Aurora, strong, independent, and unstoppable. The surgery lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of controlled chaos. 4 hours of suction, sutures, transfusions, and silence inside my own head. When I finally stepped away from the operating table, Monica was stable. Not safe, but alive. I removed my gloves slowly. There was blood on my sleeves. Her blood. 5 years ago, she put stolen money in my backpack and watched my world collapse. Tonight, I held her torn artery between my fingers and stitched her back into this one. Life has a strange sense of balance. I didn't go to the waiting room immediately. I stood alone in the scrub area, staring at my reflection. I looked tired, but steady. The girl who once begged to be believed would not have survived this moment. The woman I became did. When I finally pushed open the double doors, my parents stood up instantly. My mother's eyes were swollen from crying. My father looked smaller than I remembered. "Doctor," my father started. Then he froze. Recognition hit. Aisha. The name sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. Professional distance disappeared. Reality replaced it. "Yes," I said calmly. "I was the lead surgeon." My mother covered her mouth with her hand. You operated on Monica?" "I did." Silence swallowed the hallway. My father's voice trembled. "Is she?" "She's alive. Critical but stable." My mother broke down. She stepped toward me like she wanted to hug me but stopped halfway, unsure if she still had that right. "You saved her," she whispered. I held her gaze. "Yes. Not for you. Not for her. For me." We sat down. Felt strange, sitting across from them again after 5 years. My father couldn't meet my eyes. "I was wrong," he said finally. 3 words. 5 years too late. My mother began crying harder. We should have listened to you. We should have investigated. We should have. Yes, I interrupted softly. You should have. There was no anger in my tone. That made it heavier. My father swallowed. We found out the truth 2 years ago. I blinked. What? My mother nodded slowly. Monica confessed. The business was failing back then. She was desperate. She thought if the money disappeared, insurance would cover it. When you were in the office that day, she saw an opportunity. The hallway felt colder. She admitted she put the money in your bag, my father said, voice breaking. We didn't know how to face you after that. I let out a quiet breath. 2 years. They knew for 2 years. And you didn't call, I said. It wasn't a question. My mother shook her head, ashamed. We thought you'd never forgive us. I studied their faces. Older. Regretful. Fragile. 5 years ago, I would have collapsed hearing this. Tonight, I felt something else. Distance. Clarity. You didn't just believe a lie, I said quietly. You chose it. Because it was easier than questioning your favorite daughter. My father flinched. My mother looked down. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just stands there. A nurse approached. Dr. Aurora, she's waking up. I stood. My mother looked at me with pleading eyes. Will you see her? I hesitated. Then I nodded. Monica looked pale. Smaller than I remembered. Life has a way of stripping arrogance when it brushes close to death. Her eyes fluttered open when I entered. For a second, confusion. Then recognition. Aisha. Her voice was weak. You're stable, I said clinically. Surgery was successful. You'll need recovery time. She stared at me. You saved me. Yes. Tears filled her eyes. I don't deserve that. No, I agreed. She flinched. But I didn't save you because you deserved it. Silence. I saved you because I refused to let your lie define who I am. Her breathing hitched. I ruined your life, she whispered. You changed it, I corrected. You didn't ruin it, 'cause ruin implies destruction. And I rebuilt. Monica started crying. Not dramatic. Not manipulative. Just human. I was jealous, she admitted. Dad trusted you more. You were smarter. I felt invisible. The irony almost made me laugh. Invisible. That's what I became because of her. I paid for that jealousy every day, she continued. Watching you succeed. Knowing what I did. I looked at her carefully. For 5 years I thought you won, I said. Tonight I realized something. She waited. You didn't win. You lost a sister. The words landed softly. But they cut. When I left her room, my parents were waiting. My father stood up again. Aisha, is there any way? I stopped him gently. I don't need revenge, I said. I needed truth. And I needed to become someone no lie could destroy. My mother reached for my hand. This time I didn't pull away. But I didn't hold on tightly either. I don't know what we are now, I admitted. Family isn't automatic anymore. It's earned. They nodded. And for the first time in years, they understood the weight of that. Later that night, I walked out of the hospital alone. The air was cool. Quiet. 5 years ago, I walked out of my childhood home with a suitcase and a shattered heart. Tonight, I walked out of an operating room with steady hands and a whole identity. My sister's lie cost me everything. My home. My parents. My innocence. But it forced me to build something stronger. My skill. My independence. My self-respect. And when the moment came, when her life was in my hands, I didn't choose revenge. I chose myself. That's not karma. That's growth. And this time, no one gets to rewrite my story.